Hello and welcome back to the conversation. My name is Michael Barnett, your host, and today I am joined by Rebecca Engle. Becca is a long-time friend of mine, but she's also the managing principal of strategy and operations at Carp Strategies. They're a leading urban strategy consulting firm based in New York City. Becca is a very experienced leader who brings over 2 decades of experience in scaling mission-driven organizations across the nonprofit, tech, and social impact sectors. Super experienced individual today. I thought Becca had a lot to offer to our listeners and to the podcast today, and that's why she is here. Welcome, Becca. So excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here. Just always love to talk about this stuff and share any nuggets of knowledge I may have that helps somebody else in kind of building and growing their business.
Absolutely. So a lot of what we do at my company, Loanspark, is helping business owners scale their business with funding. And a big part of kind of being successful in growing a business is managing funding, whether it's equity or debt. And at Loanspark, we provide debt capital in the form of loans to small businesses. Some of those small businesses could be early stage, some of them are late stage, etc. But it's a big part of what we do. And I thought it made a lot of sense for you and I to have this conversation today about the major mistakes that business owners and founders make when trying to scale their business, because this is something that you have done for a long time in your business as a consultant and as a strategist working with founders and small business owners. So I think this is definitely going to be a treat for a lot of our listeners who are early stage founders or who are consultants that work with early stage founders. My goal here is to kind of give them as much information about those common mistakes as possible so they can either guide themselves or, guide their customers to better outcomes. So let's jump into it, Becca. From your perspective, what are some of the things that you've seen in your experience that kind of founders, sometimes they can't get out of their own way, and because they get so excited about their idea, their vision, this new thing that they came up with, maybe a dream that they had, right? Like, let's do it. And they get out there and they start doing it, but then there's all these pitfalls. So things that can be avoided. Like, what are some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah, I think at a high level, there's always, there's like 2 trends that I think happen quite a bit. And I think one is sort of the analysis paralysis. And I think there's folks who really get stuck in wanting to research and understand every little detail and minutia before taking any action. I think that it's wonderful to be informed and know things, but like ultimately you got to get up and start to do the thing, right? Like you can think about it all you want, but if you're not getting up and taking steps and getting, your product out the door for the first time, or you're being too precious about it, that can be really detrimental. And you can end up burning a lot of time, money, resources, by, sort of the perception of doing, but not actually taking clear steps towards doing. So I think that that's one sort of thematic pitfall. And I'm guilty of this and, spending all the time on the research and none of the time on the execution. I think the other side is having a really great idea, but not listening to the customers, right? And ultimately, I think there's a million great ideas out there. You have to figure out how it solves a problem or a need or a desire, and you have to make money off of it, right? Like you don't have a business if you're not making money off of the thing you're trying to sell. And I think it can get very simply, you get too caught in your own head on what you think is needed or desired or wanted. And you don't actually really vet that with potential customers and know who those customers are, where they are coming from, why they want this thing. And then you can never scale it up from there, right? So I think taking action is important, but also making sure that the thing you're doing is really what people want and listening to them and taking that input in, because an idea is an idea. It's not a business unless it's making money. And I think that's really important to think about, and just give yourself the space to figure it out, but just to know that there is a difference in having great ideas and having a business.
There is, and there's a lot of ideas, and ideas are free, right? But the action step isn't. There's a cost to that, and the cost is time, and sometimes it's money. But to your first point, where you mentioned like the over analysis, whatever causes paralysis, that's a big one. It's a big one for me as well. I know you mentioned you've been guilty of that as well.
Yeah.
Like Loanspark for me is the fourth company that I've been involved in founding. And I'll be honest with you, my first two companies, the over analysis paralysis thing, that affected me. And when I decided to really get serious about launching a new business, I went back to school. So I took some courses locally here at MIT. There is this guy who's more than a guy. There's this guy, his name is Bill Owlett, and he's the author of this book called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. And essentially what Bill did is he created the entrepreneurship program at MIT, which has been responsible for the success of hundreds, if not thousands of founders. So he's created a model to success. And if you follow the model, not to say that you're going to be successful, but if you follow the model, your probability of success is very high. And one of the things that I learned early on in that process is, like you just said, get started. Just get started. Like if you have a good idea and you've done some market research, meaning you've spoken to someone about your idea more than just you, right? Potential customers or, not friends and family, because friends and family, they will almost always support you no matter what. And friends and family aren't always going to be the most honest with you. So it's other people who aren't friends and family. Talk to them about your idea to sort of understand if this is something that people actually want. Okay. And then once you conduct research and make a determination that this is something that people actually want, then just like you said, just go. Like get off your ass and start making moves, do your research, figure out if this is something that can make money, figure out like the size of your market, figure out what it's going to take for you to build your MVP, right? In whatever it is, just go. So I just thought it made sense to add that as an aside. I had the same issue and I was able to solve that issue through education. So hopefully through my pain, because I've made mistakes before as an early founder, your experience as well, others who are listening to this, don't make the same mistake. Okay.
Just do it. I mean, Nike has the best slogan, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, I was also going to say bad ideas can become good ideas too, right? So I think, and again, in this paralysis state of it doesn't have to be the best idea ever, but you just have to try it and see, because you can make it better as you go and as you validate, what you're trying to accomplish and how people react to it. And so I think don't be afraid of messy and bad, right? I mean, there's that whole concept of you need 10,000 hours to become, good or great at something. I think it's the same with building a business, right? You don't want things to be precious. You don't want to wait. MVP should really be what is really the lowest thing you need to get out there to start to get feedback on, knowing that you're going to improve upon it, and figure out how to take that information in and continuously make it better over time and turn it into something great.
Exactly. And I think a lot of new founders, they want their thing, their service, their product, their software, whatever it is, to be perfect when they put it out there for users. And I will tell you, I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways, specifically in my business. And I have to always fight the urge of my new releases, whether it's a software release or we're building a new workflow or strategy or way of doing things at the company. I want things to be perfect, but I need to fight the practical urge to just release it. And then if you need to make adjustments, then you make adjustments along the way. And I learned that at a company that I used to work for, it's a company called On Deck Capital. They were an early stage commercial lending company. When I started there, we're a very, very small company. And 4 years later, of course, we IPO'd and all that stuff later with almost 1,000 employees.
No big deal,
Yeah. But when I started, there was 50 of us, right? But what I really learned there as a startup is you kind of you're changing the tires as the car is driving. Don't try to like build the perfect car.
Right.
Build a car, something that drives, get it on the road, get it moving. And as it's moving, you can upgrade it as it's moving, as it's running.
Yep.
Okay. So I think that is a very valuable point and something that founders and business owners need to understand. Like, your stuff doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to work.
It needs to work. And you need to know how you're validating it, right? Like, I think you need to understand like what you're looking for and what you're measuring to then make it the best that it can be over, X period of time.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about financial stuff, financial management, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure we could probably cover an hour, whole podcast about financial management, but there's a lot of mistakes that happen here. And on my side, I see a lot of them because when business owners are applying for loans, early stage and late stage, business owners and founders, like, we see their financial statements. Like, I see their P&L, their balance sheet, their debt schedules, their tax returns, their bank statements. And a lot of times we're like, whoa, right? You didn't plan. Okay. So what would you suggest they do there? What are some of the things that you've seen in terms of like the financial management strategy planning for a new business?
I think the biggest thing is, especially if you're a founder who is not a numbers person, you need to find someone you can trust who can give you that information, and you can't take your eye off the numbers, right? Like, I think that when you're not comfortable with a discipline, it can be really easy to just kind of push it to the side. That's when problems are going to happen. You really need to understand, what are the core metrics you need to track? Obviously, cash flow is essential. I mean, in every small business or startup I've ever seen, you don't have much of a runway most of the time, right? You have a very narrow sort of margin of error when it comes to making choices and decisions. So knowing what your runway is, knowing how much time you have, knowing where your money is going is essential. But then you also need to have an understanding of what are the other kind of core business metrics that fuel your decisions, right? So like, is that user acquisition? If it's a tech product, is it, adoption rate? Is it sales? Are you tracking gross sales, net sales, your margins? Like, have a clear understanding of what those core metrics need to be, but get someone to explain them to you if you don't feel comfortable with them. And like, you need to find that voice that you can trust and listen to, who's not a yes person, who's very much that sort of plain spoken, here it is in black and white, here's how I can help you understand. Make sure you're asking questions, and then have a system set up to be looking at your financials. I mean, I don't come at finance as a financial services background person, but have had to really learn this as I've grown and helped grow businesses, of look at your numbers every day. Like, know where you are, know where you're going, know how you're going to get there, and understand what are the good and the bad things that can happen. But you can't hide them, and you don't want to ignore them, because that's when problems happen. So I think having that system and structure and having those voices you can listen to is incredibly important. That doesn't mean you need to go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on, the most expensive, financial services firm. Yes, QuickBooks, things like that can be really helpful and valuable, but like, ultimately you need a system that you can use, and that may just be some Excel spreadsheets in the early days of your business. But you just need that system to work for you and to answer the right questions for you.
I hear you. And you made a couple great points, especially the one point that I think that most people need to realize is, don't hide from the numbers. Like, don't hide from it. Because the thing that you hide from is the thing that ultimately is going to end up hurting you. And so one of the things that we see a lot at Loanspark, speaking on just from the underwriting side, is a lot of business owners, they don't do bookkeeping. And if you don't do any bookkeeping, then you don't know what's coming in and coming out. They just kind of look at their bank statement and say, do I have money? Right. And that isn't likely the best way to run a business. But in terms of like starting the business, what I also think is you need to plan for how much money you think you're going to need in order to get to a certain point. Okay. And that certain point, in my opinion, is the point where the business is selling products and receiving income for those products, or selling the service and receiving income from those services. Now, everyone wants to talk about, well, break even. I want to break even. Break even is not something that most new businesses do, not breaking even for a lot of times, a couple of years. So need to kind of plan for how much capital you're going to need to fund your research and development, whatever that means, to fund the building of your new tools or products. If it's a physical product, is it like a software product? Is it a new service? Do you have to kind of build, I don't know, do you need systems? Do you need like a workflow? Do you need tools? Do you need to hire people? Do you need real estate to pay rent for rent? Or is there a mortgage payment? I don't know. What are the operational costs that you expect this business to incur over a period of time? Let's just call it the first year, right? And so you have to sort of build a pro forma on what that looks like. For example, when we're helping borrowers get SBA loans for startups, one of the things that we don't do that for them as a company, but we have to instruct them is they must build a 2-year pro forma of all of their expenses. What do you think you're going to spend? And then our suggestion is to take that number and double it, okay? Because your expenses will always be more than you think. And the time that it takes for you to generate revenue will take longer than you think. It's always the case, unless you get really lucky, right?
Right. I mean, we're not all going to be building, businesses that are going to exit in 2 or 3 years with an 8x multiple, right?
Exactly. But social media, if you're on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, or
easy.
YouTube, I mean, we have just been flooded with all of these creators who claim to just, they started their new company, their new business, their new app, their new technology, blah, 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 AI this and that and yada, yada, yada. And they're just making so much money like instantly. That is not reality. Okay.
Right.
It happens. Of course it happens. Just like people hit the lottery. It happens. Right. But it doesn't happen like often. So it's important for everybody else to plan, strategize, and to ensure that your great idea, right, that you came up with, that you spent a lot of time on, that you have now launched into a business strategy, doesn't crash and burn because you didn't plan for the financial side of the business. You don't want to run out of money. Is the point. It's the worst thing that can happen. Great ideas crash and burn all the time because there isn't enough money to fuel them, right?
I mean, and it's also like the hardest thing is you don't make payroll. Like that's the worst feeling in the world. You do not want to put yourself in that position as a founder. It happens. Like, we'll be honest. I've been in companies where payroll was not made and I had to figure out how I was going to pay rent that month.
Yeah,
but
me too. Been there
exactly.
too.
Like you want to be in a position that you see that coming far enough in advance that you can plan for that moment should it arrive on your doorstep and it's not a sudden surprise to you on Friday at 3 p.m. that you're not going to make payroll the next week, right? So, I mean, I think to your point, have a plan, but I would also say like have multiple plans, right? Like I'm a big believer in having, 2 or 3 forecasts running at a time. What's my kind of conservative estimate? What's my worst case scenario? And what's my aggressive estimate? And like know where you are in each of those forecasts and like what decisions you have to make when, depending on whatever happens, which those might be fun decisions, right? It might be like, now I can hire, the 3 people I need to hire to help me really accelerate this business. Or it could mean like, okay, I got to scale back on something. But I think, having those long range forecasts, being very, conservative in the sense of like overestimating expenses and timelines, like that will all serve you so well and give you confidence that you can actually make the right decisions at the right time, which the data gives you the confidence. You still have to make the choice, but you need the information to be able to make that choice and feel good about it.
I'm glad you said that, Becca, because I'm scaring everybody here, right? It's like, oh my God, do I want to start a business? It sounds like not something I want to do.
Right.
But the planning step, as Becca mentioned, will help you build confidence because now you will be able to see the future
Mm-hmm.
and make better, more informed decisions. So you're not like riding by the seat of your pants and continuously being surprised by good things or surprised by bad things, right? Not having enough money in your bank account on, let's say, a Wednesday to kind of send your money to your payroll provider on a Thursday to make payroll, that shouldn't be a surprise, right? But if you plan for that, that's a great thing. Or maybe you've done really well in a specific month. You know what your operational expenses are. I have a fixed cost of $10,000 a month for my operation expenses, but we sold more this month than usual. So now we have an extra $10,000 in our account that's profit that maybe we can use as continued investment, or we just save it for a rainy day in the event that something does occur that we need to kind of pull from. So planning is important.
Totally.
Don't ignore the planning step.
Exactly.
Super important. How about team? How about building a team? I think that's something that I also learned at MIT, which is kind of, I think, obvious to a lot of people. When you're hiring, you're building a team, but not a lot of people take into consideration how making those hires are building a team that is going to push forward your idea. Yeah. Versus I need a body that's going to, work the register. Well, it's more than just a body, right?
It's a person.
Yes.
I mean, I always feel like we have to remind ourselves that like building a team, you're bringing people into your orbit. We are messy. And I think you have to be prepared for that. And just, you need relationships, and you need great relationships with the people on your team if you're going to be successful. And so I really think as a leader, and particularly as founders, you want to find people that, are obviously smarter than you in the places you need expert advice, but you need to build relationships with those people. You need to help understand what makes them tick, help translate your vision into something that they're just as passionate about as you are. And I think that that's a step we sometimes take for granted. I think when you're building your own thing, you're naturally so excited about it, right? You like live and breathe this thing. Probably if you have a partner, they're annoyed that you're talking about it all the time, but like it's obsessive, right? You want to make sure you can help translate that to the folks around you and not just assume that they're going to automatically be as obsessed with this thing as you are. They might be, but they might not be. And that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but you need to help set up your team to really understand your vision. And I think part of that is being really clear on the why. Like, why am I doing this thing? Why is it important? Why do I think that this matters? Giving that to your team as early as possible, making that part of your hiring process. I just think the human relationship side goes a really long way to having a successful team. And I think we often ignore that side and focus, more on like the hard skills. And okay, I'm hiring for someone who's going to be, the best X, like whether that's a financial person, a salesperson, a coder, whatever. But you need to start with a relationship first and foremost. And I think this goes like at any stage of any business, right? Like your team is what makes you successful. You need great relationships, and you need to obviously have the infrastructure to support that. I also think the other thing to remember is like at different stages of a business, you need different things. So the people you bring on who are your early hires may not be the people that are there when you're, doing 9 figures of revenue. And that's okay too. I think we sometimes get caught up in the idea of loyalty and keeping people in seats, or people staying and wanting to be loyal too. But the skills at, day 5 are typically very different than the skills you need in your 7th year of operating. And sometimes people pivot and like grow into those skills or evolve. And sometimes they don't, but knowing what you need, hiring for that, having a clear process to hire for that, but making sure that you focus on the relationships and know that building a team is hard. You can't outsource it. You have to invest time into it. You have to talk to people on your team. You have to share things with them in as authentic a way as possible. But, when you do those things, I think you can really see just sort of the magic that happens when you can get multiple people supporting an idea and getting it going and sustaining it.
From what I've seen and heard and read and have been coached on, is the most effective, the best companies are the companies that have built the best team.
Yeah.
Right. The best leadership team, the best sales teams, the best account management teams, the best development teams. And the best teams aren't always the smartest teams. They're not always even the most knowledgeable teams. Always. They're the teams that are able to work together in the best ways, that utilize each other's skill sets in the best way to succeed. And I think it's the same with work. It's just like sports too. It's the same thing. You can have a team of individuals who may not be the most skilled people at their positions, but when they come together, they are the most skilled team. And I think that's also really important when building a team, for any company at any stage is important. Specifically though, Becca, for early stage companies, I do believe that building a team for an early stage company is going to be a little different than building a team for a later stage company. And I think relationships are more important for the early stage companies than the later stage companies. And I think this is an opinion. My opinion of that is because like pay may be less for early stage companies. The employees are likely working longer hours. There's a greater expectation of them and greater stress upon those employees dealing with an insane founder who is obsessive over their business, right? Let's just get to the truth. I mean, you're dealing with an obsessive founder who really they think it's a great idea. Clearly the new hire, the employees bought into that idea. But there's oftentimes not a lot of great processes, rules, guardrails, guidelines at early stage companies. A lot of times things are just open for the new set of employees, the early employees to create, to figure it all out. And so with that said, the relationships between founder and these new hires, I think it's so much more important because of the strain, because of the fact that a new business will kind of oscillate through good and bad so quickly that like you need to have a good relationship with your founder to deal with that as an employee. Right. It's like not easy working for a startup in the beginning, a lot of startups in the beginning, until they kind of get to a point of stability because new companies are unstable. They just generally are unstable businesses until after, let's say, 3 or 4 or 5 years, until they kind of hit revenue trends, okay, or funding trends that help them stabilize, right? Yeah. Your point on relationships is key. I happen to believe that's got to go a little further for startups. Because startups can be really wild. And when we're hiring, when we're hiring at Loanspark, and we were hiring initially at Loanspark. So in our first year, I mean, I scared people. I let them know you're working for a startup, man. They change frequently. Like, one day we seem like we're on the top of the hill. The next day we feel like we're the gum on the bottom of the shoe because something broke or we didn't figure something out. We made a mistake or whatever it is. But like, I would scare people to help them understand what it would look like working at a startup. It's like this sometimes, especially in the beginning, where
being honest, right? Like I think what you're talking about is the relationship of being really honest with people of what they're signing up for and what your expectations are. Like if you can't do that, you can't bring the right people in. Like it's a hit or miss at that point.
Being honest is key. Don't try to lie. So as a founder, let them know what it's like.
And let them know what you're like, right?
Right, yes.
How do you communicate when you're stressed? Are you going to show up? I mean, I've worked in those places where people come in and they're shouting and yelling and, knowing that that's what you're signing up for is important. Being clear about that. But I mean, I would also put the onus on founders of like, get coaching, like help find ways to do better as well. I think we all, and this is for everybody, right? Like we all need that feedback loop to figure out, okay, maybe I'm missing the mark. Do I need to blow up at everything? No. But do I need people to understand like where my stress or my passion is coming from and like being really clear about that?
I agree. And you hit the nail on the head there. I think founders, leaders, managers, I think that point should resonate with all of you. Because it's up to leaders to adjust. at the same time, for early stage founders, I think it's also important to try to hire people that are going to work for your personality initially as you're building the new thing. Right.
And
And
we're
as,
excited about that, like
yeah,
peak and valley. And there are people who love the sort of dynamism and drama. I mean, it's kind
yes,
of like a soap opera sometimes.
yes.
But there's people who love that, and like find those people. Those people may not love being in a heavily bureaucratic, matrix organization. And if you get to that point, they may not want to stick around. That's okay, right? But like there's plenty of people out there who like to build, who like not having a clear plan, not having a playbook, and like that kind of up and down excitement.
How do you feel about I think the quote was Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs may have quoted somebody else. It's possible. But the quote, which is hire slow, fire fast,
Mm-hmm.
right? Specifically in startups. Like, what do you think about that? How does that resonate with you? And how do you see that like applying?
I feel like it's really situational, right? Like, I think I would maybe say not hire slow, but hire with intention. You may need to hire fast. You may not have an option. If you're taking on VC funding, they're going to expect results. You can't get those results by yourself. So I would say don't hire willy nilly. Be really clear about what it is that you need, what are the competencies you're hiring for. Ideally, have a decent enough of a process to do that. So to me, it would be hire with intention. I think fire fast, yes, but you need to give really good feedback, right? Like I think even in a startup when things are highly emotional and are moving quickly, you do yourself and your team a disservice if you're just letting people go without clear feedback, because it's not just about that one person you're letting go. You have a whole team of other people around you who are going to have feelings about that. Some may be supportive of that decision, but that impacts not just the person that you're letting go, it impacts the team that you have remaining. And there may be unintended consequences if you're not letting people go, again, with intention and thoughtfully, having given opportunities for feedback and coaching and being specific. That doesn't mean hold on to people forever. I mean, I think some of the mistakes I've made as a leader is, and this I think is common for all of us, having high performers who were not good culture fits, right? And I have been very guilty of keeping those people in because they were performing and being too nervous about what that would mean for results if I let them go. But that caused big problems. And like those are
How
some of
about
the
those who are great for culture, but, and you can speak to this in a moment, great for culture, but aren't high performers?
right. I mean, it goes both ways, But I think ultimately, coming back to the point, we've both been making on relationships is you want to end in as best a way as possible. And I think kindness comes from being really honest and direct, right? Kindness isn't keeping someone on that's a low performer just because they're the nicest person in the office. Kindness is being really direct and saying, like, look, you're not hitting X, Y, or Z. Can I help give you, coaching or training or support? But if that doesn't change, like then there has to be a change. Like that is a kind thing to do, and not just to wake up one morning and say, well, Michael, Q1 numbers came in, you didn't hit them, you're out, right? And that affects everybody. So I would say I agree, but I would really want to add intention and being really intentional in all of those things. Speed can still happen quickly, but it shouldn't happen fast just to happen fast.
So there's another pitfall, challenge, issue that I find founders run into is building too fast, scaling too quickly, which sounds like, it's a gift and a curse at the same time. Kudos, great job, right? You've achieved product market fit, clients like it, they're buying it. Mm-hmm. Okay. But there could be issues when you're scaling too quickly. I can speak firsthand about these things. I did work at a company that we figured it out in the end, but
right.
We did scale really, really fast, which caused problems. But I'd like to hear from you first.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's coming to my head is like Boeing, right? Which is maybe not the best example, but thinking of businesses that focus on scale and you miss QA, QC, and like there's and Boeing is an extreme example, right? Like lives are on the line if the plane falls out of the air. And I don't mean to like belittle that example. But yes, I think you need to know, what are you scaling for? You need to know, can your infrastructure support that scale? And if not, can you support the downside? Like how big is the risk if your infrastructure can't support the scale? Are you just talking about like, well, people might need to be working more hours, to handle that? Or are you in like a compliance risk, right? Like something very serious could happen and you fall out of whatever compliance you need to maintain as a business to be successful, and to keep your reputation intact. And so, yeah, I think that's a hard needle to thread. And again, I think part of it is, where is your money coming from? Is your money patient or impatient? If you have impatient money, you're going to feel that pressure to scale. But are those folks going to be around when things go sour if you scale too fast? And I think it's really knowing, what's the wiggle room you have? How much risk can you assume? And what does that scale, where does that scale kind of fit into the risks that you see coming?
There's this like thing called responsibles. There's responsible scaling,
Yeah.
and then there's irresponsible scaling. At Loanspark, we're approached often by VCs who want to talk to us about investing in the business. Mm-hmm. We are a bootstrap business, have been since the beginning, and we expect to continue to stay that way. Maybe not forever, but at least for now, for the foreseeable future, which as a founder, the future is like, the next year, okay, for the foreseeable future. But one of the things that the VCs always say is, well, when you want to go from 10 million to 40 million, you will need my money for that, right? So, and I think a lot of companies kind of go through this kind of, do I take money? Do I take outside money? Do I use that outside money to scale? What I've seen a lot of through friends of mine who have scaled businesses, and through the couple of startups that I worked at previously, like you said, when you oftentimes getting money from the outside, oftentimes that money is impatient money. Oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes it's impatient money, which then makes a founder feel like they have to, let's just call it what it is, cut corners to scale. Cutting corners what that means to me is not planning. So doing the opposite of what you just mentioned, not planning for the scale, not planning for and implementing strategies for the new infrastructure that we need to support the scale, whatever that scale is. So if it's software, maybe it's more servers, maybe it's more engineers, maybe more DevOps people to pay attention to what's happening with the servers, etc. Or if it's, let's say you are, selling groceries, right? And it's this new grocery store and you did a great job, right? You did a great job in the little corner market. Now you want to launch and go gangbusters and open a much bigger facility, and you just received a few $1 million to then do that. Well, you need to plan for hiring, training of these new individuals, how you're going to stock your shelves, stock them the right way, your inventory. You probably need a new inventory management system to manage your inventory, to ensure that when your customers are coming to the store, that the stuff that you're selling is available. Otherwise, you're going to lose customers. So strategizing for scale is a step that can't be forgotten. Right. I think that's an important step.
Like if you have money, how are you going to spend it? Right.
That's also true. Strategize for, we're anal at our company for how we do this, like very anal specifically with our money, and have learned to be very strategic about spending in planning for and allocating the dollars to certain things, because we understand that money is hard. It doesn't just appear, right? So when you spend it, it's gone and you have to make it back. So, in order to, you don't want to lose money. I guess that's the point. We want to try to lose is the least amount possible. So really plan for your expenses, as you just mentioned. So, All good stuff. So I think for new business owners, individuals who are planning on starting a business, these are all amazing tips. I think the first one was do your research, right? Do your research the market, talk to people that aren't your significant other, your friends, your dog. Like speak to real people who could be the future users of your product or service, your thing, whatever it is, and get real feedback. Like at the very least, have conversations with people more than just like 5 people too, right? Like 50 people, okay?
Right.
100 people. Speak to
Numbers
people.
matter. Yeah.
It matters. And don't ignore negative feedback. Okay. That's also important because a lot of times we can just like justify the negative feedback or like, rationalize it out of the equation. You don't want to do that.
I mean,
Negative feedback
honestly,
is good.
like negative feedback is the best feedback.
The best feedback.
That's what you need to know to figure out what you have to change. And like sometimes you do ignore it because it doesn't fit what you're building, right? But don't don't just look for the 5-star reviews. Look at those 1-star reviews and see what they're saying.
The next point was financial management. So your money, plan for the money, right? Plan for your expenses. Whatever you build in your pro forma, you need to likely double it. Okay. And underestimate the time that it's going to take you to make money. Always. One of the things you don't want to go in thinking, it's only going to take me 6 months to break even. Like it won't. I promise you it won't. Okay. And you're going to need a lot more money than you think. Always. Plan for that. Plan for the lifestyle as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it takes you longer to get where you need to get to actually make like your own income where you can draw money from the business, like what does your lifestyle look like between now and then? That's something that you have to plan for. Hiring, team dynamics, right? Hire with a plan, hire with a strategy, build relationships with the individuals that you're hiring, especially in the startup. Like these are going to be relationship-based hires. As Becca mentioned, be honest and transparent about you, how you operate, how you manage, how you lead. Okay. Honesty is super important with your early hires. I mean, it's important for any hire, but really, really important in this relationship building process with your new and early hires. And scaling too quickly. Listen, if you're in the position where you can scale fast, amen, that's great. Go for it. But do so with a plan, right? And if it's just happening to you, that's okay too. But when it's just happening to you, then you may need to pull back and build a plan, okay, for what is happening to you. Because sometimes it just happens, right? I've heard that story before where it's like, I went on Facebook I marketed on Facebook and all of a sudden I got like 1,000 orders, right? It's like, that's
But
awesome.
if you're marketing on Facebook, you're taking steps to make that happen, right? Like
right.
It didn't just rain out of the sky. You did something to achieve that turnaround.
So those are all really, really great points. And thank you for sharing, Becca. Your opinions are super, super valuable. So as we wrap things up, what are some parting words that you'd like all business founders and startup founders to hear from you as a piece of advice?
I mean, I think, kind of what we said at the top is like, you just got to get up and do the thing, right? I mean, we all have ideas. I probably talked to my husband a million times about a million great ideas. Those are not all businesses. So take your idea, get up and start taking steps, talk to people about it, figure out what is your most, minimum viable product that you can put out there, that you can afford to put out there. But I think, just getting up and doing the thing and then learning and being open to the information that comes back and seeing where it takes you. I mean, I also think part of the journey of being a founder is that you start in one place and you think you're going to end up at point B and you actually end up at point W, right? But being excited for that learning and for that change to happen to you and, making yourself open to those things, I think you will be surprised at where you can end up. I think every company I've worked for ended up somewhere different than they intended to be when they started the business. And sometimes that happened really quickly, and sometimes that happened over time. Sometimes it was intentional. Sometimes it happened because of, external market forces that forced you to change. But just being open to the ride and the journey and letting it kind of take you, I think is what is exciting, right? Like, you're a founder for a reason, and you like the excitement, you like the drama, as we've talked about. Embrace that.
Great parting words. Well, thank you so much, Becca, for joining the podcast today. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. It's been great. And I hope that we're able to do it again in the future.
Thanks so much for having me.